Hi, and welcome to this week's The Mortgage Broker Broadcast. This is the podcast made for mortgage brokers at every single level. Whether you're just starting out in your mortgage broker journey or running your own mortgage broker firm or focused on growing and scaling your existing business, this podcast is for you. In today's episode, we're getting back into the topic of help to find or home buying with your clients, whatever you wanted to call it. So last week we talked about the benefits of providing that service for your clients. If you've not listened to that yet, I would recommend you listen to last week's podcast before listening to this week's. Last week, we got into the benefits of helping the clients with their house purchase as well as arranging the mortgage. This week, what I want to talk about is how you actually put that into practice. So if you are listening to this week's podcast without listening to last week's, I would recommend you go back to listen to that one first before listening to this one. And if this is the first time listening to the podcast, I'm your host, Craig Skelton. I'm a mortgage business owner, mentor and coach, and I'm here to help self-employed brokers and business owners build the business that they want. This podcast is all about giving you practical advice and the right mindset to help you grow personally and professionally. You can expect informal discussions, actionable tips, and plenty of motivation to help you keep moving forward. Before we get into today's episode, if you enjoy the podcast, really appreciate it if you could subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other brokers who find it helpful. Your support helps us reach even more people within our industry. So as I said, last week I talked about the benefits of helping your clients find their first home or their next home. And I said this week is more around how you put that into how you then put that into practice. Just to briefly recap on last week, we talked about building this as your niche, how it helps justify your broker fee, builds long-term relationships, strengthens ties with estate agents, increases referrals, and creates a service that no one else is offering, and how it provides real service and value to your clients, which all sounds great. And you understand all the benefits, which we've talked about before. Is now this week is about how you actually put into practice. So the first thing I would do as a mortgage broker, if this is something you truly want to engage your clients with, is find something to call it something that you can get that brand out there, you can get that name into the marketplace, whatever you, home buying consultant, help to find service, home buying advice, whatever the case may be, you need to get a brand for that particular part of the service. Once you've got that brand, you then need to get clarity and have a bit of a pitch to your clients in terms of what does that actually mean, because nobody else will be talking about this. So what you've got to find is you've got to find your pitch to that client, perfect your pitch by practicing, obviously, but find that explanation to clients, and you can just do it, roll it off your tongue, and explain to clients exactly what it is you do and exactly how you differ to other mortgage brokers. So once you know what you're going to call it and how you're going to explain it, when do you do that? Well, the first thing I would do is I'd be explaining this as part of every single conversation you have with a client until you've signed them up for a mortgage. So if you're getting a lead through from your website or referral, however that looks, when you're speaking to that client for the first time, you're understanding their position that they're looking to buy their first home or buy their next home. This is where then you can explain briefly when the lead comes in on that call of how you will help them find their next home. So talk about it, explain it briefly when you get that lead through, which then follows on to the next part, which is when you've got that lead booked in the first appointment, you then need to be explaining what you do right at the start. So with your first appointment with your client, as I've said before, it's their appointment, you're asking what they want to get out of it, understand all that. Then when you're going through your proposition, your IDD, whatever you want to call it, when you're explaining what you do, you need to be talking about your home buying service as part of that. Before you get to your broker fee, before you even talk about fees, you need to be explaining what you do and how you work with clients who are buying the first home or moving to a new home. So the things you're going to start talking about is things like you're on their side, you're working for them, you are going to help them negotiate, arrange viewings with estate agents, you're going to help them negotiate, you're going to help them find a house, you're going to register on Rightmove and start to get alerts about the types of houses and the types of areas, the types of homes your client's looking for. So you're signposting with that client, that you're giving them that message from the start that you are their one and only contact when they're buying their first home. or their next home. So if they are on Rightmove on a Friday night, or they get an alert through, or they're searching for that house or searching for the next home, what you want to get into that client's mind is the first they think about is you. So they want to speak to you, get your thoughts on it, get your opinions on that house they're buying, because you will know the local market. You will understand that better than they will. What you've got to get across to this client is that you're dealing with transactions, home buying transactions, day in, day out. They may never have ever done this before. They may never have done this for 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. But this is what you do day in, day out. You have to explain that to the client. So then you're giving them value on what you do and how you do it. And use examples at this point. I used to use examples where I talk about to my clients, sort of saying about part of the service, what I did was this, what I did with this is the benefits to the client, giving them that signpost that you are on their side and you are the only one on that side. So getting that across to the client, you've got to explain to them that there is nobody else on their side in this whole process apart from you. Vendors who are selling pay the estate agent commission. So they're employees of the estate, like the estate agents, the employees of the vendor. So you've got to get that across to and explain that to your potential clients that you're the only one that's on their side and you are going to put your arm around them. You are going to work with them. You are going to help them find their next home and all the things you're going to do. And around that is talking about how you will help them put offers forward, negotiate on the properties when you can with the estate agents. And if you are giving them that help and support from day one, they have to buy into you in terms of what you're going to do. And by using clear examples of last week I did this, last week this is what I did for my client. Last week I say one of my clients £10,000 because they were going to put an offer in this house. They've been on the market for 12 weeks, never had a reduction. All the things that you know within the house buying process that you are already an expert on, you're going to use that to your advantage to get buy-in from your client. So you're talking about it at the lead when you get that call. You're talking about it in your first appointment. You're then backing it up every single week with what you're doing about helping them find. So if you do see a property that comes on the market that might be of interest to them, send it to them, register with your local agents, do what you need to do to make sure that it backs up what you've talked about, which is you contacting them about potential properties that are coming onto the market. And if you've got a good relationship with estate agents, use that relationship. If you've got a hot buyer who you've got your ARP, DIP's accepted, look in this area, this is the criteria, this is what they're looking for, they're your hot buyer. Get that person out to the estate agents, people that speak to the people that you know and trust and say, look, I've got this hot buyer. This estate agent just wants to sell the house. That's all that they're interested in. And if they can sell a house to somebody that's your client and you give them a far greater chance of that offer become real and actually completing on that house purchase, use that to your advantage. So like I say, tout that client to the local estate agents that you know and trust, because then you are backing up with your client what you're actually doing, what you've talked about doing, you're backing that up. And again, going back to my point before about one of the benefits from last week's podcast, it again helps you with the relationships with local estate agents. So this is where the work comes in, because you've got a lot of work to do here before they find that perfect home. So you are contacting a client, you are contacting the estate agents, you're building up that local knowledge and trust with your clients and the local estate agents as well. And then when it comes to a point where if you can arrange viewings, great, do that. If you can put offers forward, then do that. If worst case scenario, you're giving advice to the client, because I see it so many times. How many times as a mortgage broker have you lost a client to an estate agent mortgage broker because there's conditional selling, there is sort of giving all the reasons why they should be using their broker, which we know is not actually the truth most of the time. So eliminate the risk as much as you possibly can of that estate agent referring your client to their mortgage broker by doing as much as you can, so you minimize the interaction between the client and the estate agent. By doing that, you're protecting your client. Now, worst case scenario, if then your client does have to speak to that estate agent, prep your client. Make sure that that client understands what's going to happen in that call, or if they are forcing your client to go in to see their mortgage broker to get their offer qualified to be able to put it forward to the vendor, which we all know is absolute bull. If you know that is going to happen, prep your client. Go on the appointment if you can. I know that's happened before and I've seen that happen. And if you can do that, great. But 99% of the time, you won't be able to do that. But what I would say is prep your client, tell them about what's happened. So, for example, I had a mortgage client who's recently bought off a new build, which we know that they're worst, one of the worst in terms of you've got to use our broker, blah, blah, blah. I just said to my client, this is what's going to happen. They're going to force you to see their mortgage broker. There's your decision in principle. Whatever they say, whatever they do, speak to me about it before you do anything. Don't arrange an appointment. Don't jeopardize this decision in principle we have from that client. And if you agree to do anything, it could jeopardize it, which means you could lose that house, which then means you're not going to be a happy client. So don't do anything without talking to me first. So I prepped the client, said they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do the other. Client was forewarned, knew what was going to happen, total control. There's my decision in principle. Craig's my broker. If you've got any questions, any concerns, speak to him. That's you've accepted my offer. That's what I'm doing. That's how it works. And they were very clean cut. There were no concerns from a client point of view. There was no wavering. There was no nothing. It was a case of that's my decision because I prepped them. That's my decision in principle. That's who we're using as a broker, and it was like a non-negotiable. So try and if the client does have to be exposed to the estate agent or builder, then make sure that you're prepping your client for that conversation and know when that client is going in to see that broker, and make a note in your diary to then at least try and speak to them as soon as you know that they've come out, or during the appointment, just make sure you're free to take the call. Should they give them that option to then call you. If you know they're going to see their broker at 10 o'clock and that estate agent, the large corporate estate agent, that would know they're going to get battered and they'll give all the reasons why they're using their broker, should be using their broker, not you. Make sure you're available for that call if you can. If you're in an appointment, then worst case scenario, make sure you're available to speak to them as soon as they finish that call. You want to protect your client as much as you possibly can. So again, if you're talking about with your help to find, it's all part of the service that you're going to give the client the best chance of getting that home at the best possible price you can for them. So just to recap, how you actually put this into practice, the first thing to do is call it something you want to know. You can then build your website, build your content around that brand on however you want to call it. Home buying consultant, home buying, whatever you want to call it what you want, get it branded, and then part of your website, part of your social media, and then you will buy into it more in terms of the service you provide. So for this instance, we'll call it home buying service. So home buying service is on your website, home buying service, explanation on your website, part of the process. A lead comes in, you explain how the home buying service helps. Yes, you're going to help them find a mortgage, get them the best deal that they can, get them the right deal that they can, talk about protection, but you're also going to help them find their new home, their next home, their first ever home when you're booking the appointment in your diary. Then when you're going through the proposition early in the first appointment, you then talk about it again and explain it a little bit more detail that you are the one that's on their side. You are the only person that is on the side of a purchaser during this whole transaction. Stressful, yes. Emotional, yes. Ups and down roller coaster, yes. However, you are on their side to make this process as seamless and as smooth as possible. So you're doing that in your first appointment. At the end of the first appointment, you reiterate again, you're summarizing about your home buying service. Again, refine that at the end of the first appointment. Agree actions moving forward. Anything that they know, sort of see, any house that they're looking interested in, they ring you first. They don't book the viewing. They don't do anything apart from contacting you. And then you then offer that. You're then offering your home buying service. Then that comes into action. Arrange the viewing if you can. Negotiate with the agency if you can. Prep your clients. If the client does have to go and see the mortgage broker, make sure you're prepping your clients. What you're trying to do is just, again, reinforce the fact that you are on the client's side. Hopefully that's explained the home buying service. Hopefully that's helped you sort of process a bit more detail. Last week we talked about the benefits. This week we've talked about how in a little bit more detail. If you do want to know any more about that or talk about any more, then just message me and I can offer any help or support or advice. On the podcast, do that on social media, on LinkedIn, on the podcast comments. any way you want to. Just put your thoughts on it there, and I will answer or help or offer any advice. This has to be part of your process. This will be your niche. This will differentiate you from your clients. So it's not something you can go into half-hearted. You've got to believe it. You've got to brand it. You've got to trust in what you're doing and get your clients to do that as well, because this is what you'll do as a broker. And once you get the message out locally that this is what you do, you'll get your name out there, you'll get your referrals, you get your reviews, you'll get your brand known with local estate agents, which will help as well. And they may want to work with you as a broker rather than going to the local estate agents when you're first starting out and saying, have you got a broker? Here's my card. Let me know if things change. If you've got an existing one, cut all that out. Just do what you say you're going to do with the clients. Prove how good you are with your clients. Will prove to the estate agent that you actually, actions are far louder than words, as I say. So you're doing that with the client and you're doing it with the estate agents as well. So we've talked about benefits last week. Review those if you need to. Get your process sorted, get your service sorted, brand it, get it out there, talk about it, do it, and put it into practice and sort of see the benefits you can have from offering this service, which is totally different to most other brokers that are in your local area. So that's it. That's this week's podcast. This week's episodes, we've talked about helping clients buy their first and next home on last week's and this week's. And then next week, we've got Dan not come back onto the podcast. Looking forward to having a catch up with Dan, talk about what he's been doing. He was on quite some time ago, but he's on the podcast next week. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this podcast, enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, please leave a review, share it with other brokers. And if you are thinking about becoming a self-employed mortgage broker, launching your own brand of business, or ready to take your existing business to the next level, go to my website, craigskelton.co.uk, book a discovery call, just get in touch and we can have a chat about how I can help you reach your goals for 2025. And as always, please remember to run your own race.